Hello, happy Wednesday. It is time for our live chat about carbohydrates. So first of all, let me just say, I hope that you guys had a fabulous day. It's Wednesday. I don't know about you, but I am flippin' exhausted and I am so ready to have this amazing talk with you guys and then have dinner and go to bed. Like, it's gonna be an 8 o'clock bedtime for me tonight. What time do you guys normally go to bed? Comment below what time you normally go to bed. For me, 9 o'clock is pretty much, normally the latest that I go to bed. Now, of course, there's like, sometimes that is later, sometimes it's not, but normally 8:39, that's my bedtime. But tonight, it's definitely gonna be a 8 o'clock bedtime. So let me know what time you guys go to bed. So I asked yesterday, so the Tuesday discussion question was, what are your questions and fears and misconceptions about carbohydrates? Now, the reason why I wanted to ask this question is because carbohydrates get a bad reputation, right? Carbohydrates are the ones that get dragged through the mud and in fad diets and in diet culture, right? Atkins, keto, all these low carb diets are super popular. And here's the thing. Yes, low carb diets and, keto and Atkins and those different types of things, they produce short-term weight loss, but I encourage you to reflect on, is this a long-term sustainable way of eating and lifestyle for me? And for a lot of people, that's kind of no, because you want to be able to enjoy a piece of cake on your birthday, or you want to be able to have a pizza every once in a while and those sorts of things. So it's not realistic to completely cut out carbohydrates from your diet if you're looking to have a long-term sustainable, nutrition protocol for yourself in line with your goals. So before we get into the questions that we have here on the discussion question, I wanted to boil down what carbohydrates are, why they're important, and why they get a bad reputation. So let's start off with what carbohydrates do in our body. So carbohydrates are our body's primary source of fuel and energy. So basically, you eat carbohydrates and your body breaks that down into glucose, and glucose is then brought into the cells and used for energy. And it's the easiest way to provide energy to your cells. And so carbohydrates are important to make sure we have, enough energy, but carbohydrates get a bad reputation because we tend to overeat the highly processed, highly refined carbohydrates that are high in things like added sugar, added sodium, added saturated fat and hydrogenated oils, all of these other more harmful and fat gaining, promoting things that we get along with refined processed carbohydrates. So how we can make the distinction is that we want to be choosing most of our carbohydrates to be coming from complex carbohydrates, meaning that it's like whole, real food and less processed. And the three main sources of complex carbohydrates are going to be fruit, starchy vegetables, things like potatoes, corn, peas, and also whole grains. So whole grains are going to be oats, quinoa, farro, brown rice, those different things. So what makes it a complex carbohydrate is that it has fiber and other vitamins and minerals already in there, and it hasn't been, processed and those that outer husk of the grain hasn't been ripped off and thrown away. And so it's important that we make that distinction, right? We want to be choosing the high fiber, complex carbohydrates, not only so we get the carbohydrates and the energy, but so that we get the fiber for the satisfaction and the fullness and for the gut health, okay? So I'm not here to say that you can never have processed refined carbohydrates, but I just want you to be aware of the difference, and that we do want to be choosing mostly our complex carbohydrates, not only for body composition and fat loss and those sorts of things, but also for your health, for your gut health, for your blood work, for your heart, for glucose control, all that good stuff. So carbohydrates are necessary, all right? So now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and go through the questions that we got on the discussion question. So first one is, what vegetables have the highest carbohydrate content? So that goes along with our question, what I was saying earlier about complex carbohydrates, so starchy vegetables. So we can think of vegetables as being on a spectrum. So we've got our non-starchy, like leafy greens, and then we've got our non-starchy, colorful vegetables, which are going to be like our bell peppers, tomatoes, summer squash, different things like that. And then it goes to colorful, starchy vegetables, sweet potatoes, peas, corn, stuff like that. And then the last one is non-colorful, starchy vegetables. So that's where our white potatoes are. So towards the end of that spectrum, those are going to be the higher carbohydrate content vegetables, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with eating them. But if you're looking for eating for volume, like we have talked about before, having high fiber content and filling up on that high volume, low calorie foods, that's going to be more on this end of the spectrum, more of those non-starchies. If we think about our balanced plate, we want half of the plate to be color, meaning like our non-starchy vegetables, a quarter of the plate to be our starch or our complex carbohydrate. So this could be our whole grains, this could be our starchy vegetable, and then our last quarter of the plate to be our lean protein source. So whether that's, our chicken, fish, eggs, whatever. So think about your starchy vegetables to be fitting in that complex carbohydrate section rather than half of our plate being that non-starchy vegetable, okay? So that's those are the vegetables that you can think of as being higher carbohydrate and counting more towards one of those complex carbohydrate sources. Stefano said, kind of surprised frozen Eggo waffles are so fortified with calcium, iron, vitamin D. Or vitamin B. Thoughts? So so actually a lot of processed grains and processed carbohydrates are fortified. So basically what fortified means, and we see fortified grains in terms of like those Eggos, fortified bread, cereal, cream of wheat, all these different grain sources, processed grain sources, is because during processing, basically if here's our grain, if it's stripped away, that outer husk that no longer makes it a whole grain, that's where all the vitamins and fiber are. So they strip that away, process it into enriched white flour, and then that is what they make the cereal or the Eggos or whatever out of it. And then they fortify by putting back in another form of vitamins. Now, they do this because they have more control over the content of the vitamins and the minerals, and it actually creates a longer shelf life by having a refined grain to use as the base. And, for most people, that's kind of what they're used to. It's more palatable. It's more, enjoyable to have that, softer white bread, white grain, refined sort of product. And so Fortification is actually regulated, and so that's how they can have on the outside like good source of calcium, good source of iron, like different things like that. And a big piece of it is to help children not be deficient, because kids eat a lot of cereal and Eggos and bread products and those sorts of things. And so in order, as like a national health, almost like a public safety thing, they make sure that they're fortified to help the kids. And so it's not a public health safety crisis that all these kids are deficient in iron and vitamin B and those different types of things. So I hope that that was a little long-winded, but I hope that clears that up. So fortification is of processed, refined carbohydrates and grains in order to put those vitamins back in that were stripped away from that whole grain source. When you choose a 100% whole grain, then those vitamins and minerals are still intact and still in that product. Okay, Rochelle says, have always been told that carbs are bad and to eat low carbs, and she's learning that this isn't 100% accurate. Yes. So like I had said at the beginning, kind of ran through why carbohydrates are important, especially if you are somebody who is active and is exercising. You need to have carbohydrates to fuel that exercise. And so, we have to break away from the idea of carbs are bad. We want to be choosing the right carbs and, being strategic in terms of our portion sizes and pairing it with protein and different things like that. But we don't want to have that blanket statement of all carbs are bad. And so that way of thinking didn't happen overnight. It's not going to go away overnight. So just be patient and kind with yourself and recognize when you have these thoughts, and let's work on reframing them to say, okay, I know that this is how I think before, but I know I need carbohydrates because I'm working out and I'm moving my body and I want to fuel that performance. Here's the other thing. Our brains need carbohydrates. I don't know if you've ever been super low on your carbohydrates, but you experience a brain fog. You are like, so when I was prepping for my bodybuilding show in 2017, towards the end, when those carbs are really, really low, I'll tell you what, it was hard to kind of like think as clearly as I needed to, because your brain actually requires a minimum of 130 grams of protein to, function properly. So that is really interesting, and keep that in mind that your brain is a muscle that needs to be fueled as well. Okay. So Heather had a great question about gluten. So she says, I heard those with Hashimoto's are to avoid it, but others say we don't have to. So I was actually reading on this question and I found it very interesting, and I didn't have much experience or knowledge about it. So I found this really amazing research study that I'll go ahead and link in the comments when I'm done with the video. But basically, Hashimoto's is a thyroid disease. It's an autoimmune disorder that attacks your thyroid. A lot of people with Hashimoto's also have a lactose intolerance. The majority of people have a lactose intolerance, which means they have to, eliminate and reduce that from their diet. And celiac disease is also very common in Hashimoto's, which is why some people say to eliminate gluten, because celiac is the allergy to gluten, while some others say no. So if you have Hashimoto's, what I recommend doing is getting your blood test for celiac. And if you have celiac disease, then yes, eliminate gluten. If it comes back and you don't have celiac disease, gluten is not going to harm you, and it's not going to necessarily improve or decline or, make worse your symptoms. What nutrition protocol is most helpful for people with Hashimoto's is the anti-inflammatory diet, which is basically high in fruits and vegetables, low in saturated fat, high in healthy fats, things like avocados, nuts and seeds, olive oil, those sorts of things, okay? We can talk more about that another time if that's something of interest. Woo! I need a sip of water. Okay, the last question that we have here says, I was taught, from Amy. Welcome, Amy. I think she just joined this week, so welcome. Glad to have you here. Amy says, I was taught to avoid carbs at all costs, which I did faithfully for about 6 weeks. I felt absolutely horrible and had no energy to do anything. It was the most miserable time of my life. See, that goes right back to what I was saying of that you need carbohydrates for your brain to function properly and for all of your organs and your energy levels and all of that. So yeah, so you can follow it, like whether it's keto or whatever, low carb, for a short period of time, and maybe you see a lot of weight loss in that short period of time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's sustainable or that it's going to make you feel the best. We want to make sure that you are feeling your best, performing your best, and able to, actually utilize your muscles and your energy to do good work. And if you're, low energy, you're not going to be able to put in as much energy and oomph at your workouts as you want to, which, that's what's going to help you see more progress, right? So any other questions? I know we have a couple people watching live. Any other specific questions about carbohydrates that you want to work through right now while I'm here? If you're watching this on the replay and you have a question, just ask it in the comments, and I will come back on and, be sure to answer your question. But, there's a lot of misinformation, and it's understandable because the diet industry, the dieting industry and different weight loss programs and different things like that, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that preys on creating failure in people, that makes people feel like they failed on the diet when in fact the diet failed you, because it's meant to fail to make you come back. So we want to learn how to fuel your body and nourish your body in a way that is going to, be sustainable, and also means that you don't have to go on any more diets. Okay, Peter asks, is it okay to eat carbs at night? And I'm going to go ahead and say yes. You don't want to eat like a lot of processed, high in added sugar, refined carbohydrates by themselves at night, because think about, carbs are our main source of energy. So when we eat carbohydrates, we get a boost of energy. So if you eat a bunch of processed carbohydrates right before bed, your body's like, all right, I got all this energy. What are we doing? And you're like, I'm going to go to bed. And then it actually can impair your sleep. And you're not actually utilizing that energy for good work and good things during the day. So if you are eating carbs at night, what I recommend doing is making sure you pair it with some protein to stabilize your blood sugars, to promote muscle protein synthesis while you're sleeping, and choose a complex carbohydrate source, some of like what we talked about at the beginning. Cheryl asks, can I get my carbs from fruits and vegetables only? And I'm going to go ahead and say, if that's what you prefer, then yes, making sure you get a variety of fruits, a variety of vegetables along that whole spectrum. And if you're getting enough carbohydrates, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I also don't want you to think that there's something wrong with having oats every once in a while, or brown rice every once in a while, or quinoa, different things like that, different whole grains. That's okay to have too. But yeah, if you love getting your carbs from fruits and vegetables only, that's awesome, because it's super high in fiber, super high in vitamins and minerals and water content. And, that's going to help you feel really full and satisfied, especially if you're working towards a body composition goal or a fat loss goal. That's going to be a good way to go. Okay, this was great. Thank you guys so much for being here, being present, asking questions. I want you to know that I am really looking forward to next week. If you have not already voted on the poll for what you want to talk about next week, be sure to go and do that. Then we can make sure that we actually address what you want to talk about. Okay, we got another question. Should I have my carbs before or after my workout? Well, that's a great question. So let's think about what carbohydrates do in the body, right? They provide fuel and energy. So it's actually a very good idea to have some carbohydrates before your workout so that you can fuel that workout. And then after your workout, you want to make sure you have some protein to replenish and repair your, the damage that you've done to your muscles during that workout. But you also want to get some carbohydrates in there to top off your glycogen stores. And basically glycogen is the stored form of carbohydrates in your muscle. So that being said, I actually do have that performance nutrition quick guide. And if I have, different pre-workout protocols and snack ideas, intra-workout recommendations, and as well as post-workout nutrition. So if you haven't already gotten your copy of that free performance nutrition quick guide, comment on this video and I'll be sure to send it to you. Okay? Woo! This was good. I am happy to be here hanging out with you guys. Thank you for watching. And like I said, let me know what you want to talk about next week, and I'll see you soon. Have a great night.